Welcome to FMA Discussion. This is episode 239, and tonight is a theme episode. We're going to be discussing hours versus years, and then we're going to tie it into its direct correlation to sparring. And tonight, I have two guests. Hopefully, the other one is going to be coming back, returning soon. We have Tuhon, Belton, Lubas, and we have also
Tuhon.
Grody, who just hoping was here, but and all that. So we're hoping he's going to be joining us soon. If you have not, smash that like button. Tell us where you're watching from. And we're just getting started, folks. And again, hopefully Steve is going to be joining us. Test run went pretty good, so he shouldn't have any issues. And he keeps coming in and out. But all right. So we're going to get started. So folks that are just jumping in, again, this is a theme episode. So this came about, I brought up I started a post in the FMA discussion, which I was a little reluctant to do just because I wasn't sure of the responses I would be getting and all that. And come to find out, actually, the responses were really good. Nobody got emotionally attached and anything like that. They were pretty good objective comments, and I thought they went well. So based on that, I decided to do a theme episode. And the reason why I chose Tuhon and Steve Grody, I thought they had some of the better answers and all that. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're not going to identify one being better than the other. We're just going to give our opinions on it, or actually these gentlemen are to give their opinions on it from both lenses and all that. And hopefully you guys can get something out of this and that. So Tuhon, I want to thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
I'm hiding my face because the sensitive subject. When it comes to years, there might be some old dogs and some OGs that might come after me. So I'm speaking on behalf of Tuhon. I'm allegedly Tuhon.
You are allegedly Tuhon. Yeah. Allegedly.
Yep. It may come off later because I might have to take a sip of this. But
yes.
You do not know who I am.
So hopefully. All right, Steve is here. Hopefully he is got it. All right. Don't touch anything.
Okay, I'm not touching anything. It's all I don't know, ghosts in the machine.
How's your internet connection?
Or that you're clowning me, Dean. You're just huh? Can you hear me? Oh,
I hear you. Yeah, perfect. Okay. Yeah. Okay. How's your internet connection?
Not bad. It's supposedly fast enough. I mean, I mean, it's worked before.
Yeah. The only reason I'm bringing that up is just because sometimes when you go in and out, sometimes it can be due to that, but I'm not saying that's the case here. So, Steve, we just got started. Just introduce the both of you guys and what we're covering tonight and how we're not really picking sides from one to the other. You guys are going to give a lens onto both and let the viewers draw their own conclusion. You know?
Yeah. Absolutely, that's always what you do. And I heard all the introductory stuff, and I've already posted Belton's home address for anybody that wants to go there for challenges. Especially people that are skilled with blow darts. It's so the thing about hours, it is, as we were saying, hours versus years. It's the time and quality that people put in, and certainly the efforts of the instructor to be honest about the material, because in curriculums there's a certain amount of traditional stuff that's carried along generally. But not all of it is as easily workable as other parts of the curriculum. And so I guess my first thing would be like, if the hours are the hours and years, is the time, is the time people putting in, is it working on things that really seem to fit a response to the real world? Is it something that only works there and then with a cooperative memorized response, or does it work under cooperative circumstances? And I'll get the hate mail coming in, but I think that there are a lot of people that start with the cool and then eventually get to the, well, really what we just do is step back and cut or smash the hand or something like that. And I think that it's fine to start with what's actually practical and work your way back to, well, but here's the curriculum, a more traditional curriculum, if you're interested, and how it's done. But my first concern is a student's welfare, not their attendance and their money. It's that they're coming, my commitment is to their welfare. And so I'm going to show them what, in my humble opinion, is most workable. And then I'll say, okay, but here are these common methods, and here's okay, why don't I give an example instead of being vague and coy? Everybody knows what a roof block is. Everybody knows what a roof block is. And I would never myself start by showing somebody a roof block. I would work on Largo, long range skills, stepping out of the way. And then I would say, but if you failed, the roof block can save your butt. So I'll try and do a drill where I strike at them and they move to Largo and strike my hand. But sometimes, or actually the way I'll do the drill is I'll have them strike at me, I'll move away, they move back as I counter strike on the next beat and they smash my hand. But sometimes I'll try and time it so I force them, they can't get back to Largo, so they can feel the reason that they actually have to do a roof block.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think that the time, in terms of time spent and hours and all that, it's to get a feeling, an intuitive feeling for something, because using your intuitive perception is a different skill in a different part of your brain than the memorization part of your brain.
Okay. So we're just getting, Tuhon. So let's start with the hours, like what Steve kind of just touched upon. So looking at these individually speaking, why are hours important to your lens? And all that?
Because I look at it from a neurological point of view. So, if you look at everything we do, everything is a skill. It starts out when you walk, you develop that when you're growing up, and skill gets better over time. And I think if we're to look at every movement pattern, regardless of FMA, Muay Thai, BJJ, it's all skill development, right? And so if we break it down from the neurology perspective, skill is really myelination of the neuron. So I'm not trying to get scientific, but I've been studying a lot of neurology lately, and I took courses in Arizona under Z Health, and what I learned is that when you develop a skill set, a new pattern, a new skill, a new movement, you get the myelination of your neurons, and the stronger the myelination over time, if you keep repeating that skill, actually if you increase load, it actually increases the myelination. The impulse travels faster. It's probably a route that you're going to go down to in a response situation. So in a fight or flight situation, if you go from skill and hours to sparring, it's probably to go down that pathway more so than if you had no skill and or a previous skill. So I just look at it from the brain perspective, and it made sense to me that to get these neurons firing and developing these neural pathways to movement, you've got to keep putting in the time. And I'm just going to give one story. This is a great story because it happened to me that down in LA. I went down for PANS for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and previous to going down there, I was, GM Bobby Tabuada. Hello, GM. He's watching. So,
all right.
And Tuhon Jack. So
even after all the things you said about them,
that GM Bobby's the most handsomest Italian guy ever. Yes. So pretty much I was training at a gym prior to the gym I'm at now, or my gym I should say, and before we started sparring, we would shake hands, fist bump, and we get down on the ground. So we'd sit or kneel down, and we start sparring from the floor. Because that gym didn't initiate throws, which is really unlike BJJ considering it's judo roots. So I'm down at Art of Jiu-Jitsu, AOJ, where the Mendez brothers are at, and there's 70 of us, and we're about to spar. And I shook hands with a guy, and I was the only one that went down on one knee, and I just realized what just happened, and I just got up right away and pretended I was just doing a lunge and stretching, but it was so embarrassing.
I'm just getting this stretch in. Don't worry about
oh man, it's like, yeah, it was so embarrassing, and I was so upset about it. I'm like, where did this training scar happen? And I'm like, damn it, all those months of, okay, spar time, boom. So I was developing this skill and this recognition of like spar and get down on my knee, and I was so upset. So I refused to get down on my knee without at least touching hands and touching them first, and maybe initiating a throw. And you see it happen all the time with fighters, and having trained fighters for a long time, you could pretty much predict kind of where their skill set and their training, what their go-to moves are, because they develop that pattern over time. And the only way you get that is over constant repetition. And to get repetition, you have to have hours. So that's where I tie the hours in, rather than saying, over the years I've trained this much, or I trained this many years. I'm like, yeah, but what time did you put
within those years? Right?
Yeah, what time did you? What kind of reps did you put in? Like Steve said, were they quality reps? Were they with a quality instructor? Was there an understanding? Was there load on the reps? So what I mean by load is, if you put a bench press and you did a 10-pound plate on each side, it might be difficult in the beginning, but if 3 months later you're still doing the same 10-pound plate, you're not progressively getting better. You got to load the weight. So you have to initiate change within your muscular structure, your physiological structure, your neural structure, to get that sealed in, I guess is what I'm saying. So, and people say that guy's good at sparring. It's just, I think he's put the time in of constantly dealing with looks. And so when he keeps seeing the same angles of attack, his response time is faster. He may look faster, but he's not really faster. He's just better at processing. He's better at processing your movement. He's better at reacting and counteracting your movement. Because I get that all the time. People, they're like, wow, you're fast for a 45-year-old guy. I'm like, I'm not faster than when I was 25 or 35. I'm better at reading you. And they're like, they don't get it. They still think I'm some kind of wizard at movement. I'm not. I'm just better at reading you. I've done the reps, and so I can counter you faster than you can recounter me. So that's my theory on that, basing on the brain rather than the art or the curriculum or the people who claim to train for 20 years, but I can probably fit in 5 years of training in their 20 years of my time.
Yeah, and so a long time training a bad habit doesn't help.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Yeah, that's why I called my knife curriculum cognitive intuitive training, because it's about the cognition and working. And so Danny Kahneman, is, for people, his latest book was called Thinking Fast. So maybe he's written something else, but it's about the two different basic modes of thinking. One is where you're figuring something out, and one is where you're reacting intuitively and immediately. And it's not like one is better than the other, because in the growth of any art form, you need to go back and forth. So you can start with an explanation. So you start a student with an explanation, but then you work on it, and you make it so that there are choices between one thing or another. And so you make it so that the recognition, like you said, is more immediate, because it's like in basic military concept. Yeah, firepower matters, but what the big obsession is information. Who has the best information the quickest? And so I agree with you. There are people that sometimes think I'm fast, and I'm just thinking, no, I just saw you coming from a mile away. That's all.
Yeah.
And
picking up nuances, telegraphs. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and one of the things that is not exactly specified in Guru Edgar Salite's curriculum, but that he made a point of, was that one of your goals is just reading the opponent.
Yep.
And that's a general purpose. That's a skill that comes from partly from so your intuitive stuff. You go back and forth between the intuitive and the consciously intellectual. So you spar. And hopefully you're being intuitive, but then you step back, hopefully, and analyze it. And you go, what worked, what didn't work, why didn't that work, why did that work, why was that a surprise? And then you go back and you come up with a training method by which you hopefully solidify the good stuff and get rid of the bad habits or the mistake. Oh, I was too anxious to get my hit back in. I put my big head in the way, something like that.
Okay.
You know, what's interesting is Jim Bobby, if you're still on, how you doing, sir? Grandmaster Bobby, along with Grant Tuhon and even Dr. Kelly, these are the three men that I have three different systems under. Jim Bobby says it all the time. It's not like I wouldn't say Jim Bobby is a neurologist or a functional neurologist or has a PhD in neurology, but he does in the sense of some of the old methods of treating. Jim Bobby would say, look, I'm not treating you, I'm making you faster. That's what he would say. He goes, all these people think of the grouping systems and this stuff is not fighting. He goes, you want to learn how to fight? I'll show you how to fight. But this is really training you to react faster. He goes, I'm going to make you faster and much more faster in your defense and counter. And so a lot of times Jim Bobby will feed and he goes faster, faster. And then he'll randomize it. But before that, the way he structures his curriculum, you've got your level 1, your basic 12 strikes. And then he builds up to suddenly from receiving it, you're feeding it. And then you go random, but these are all patterns that if you're familiar with patterns 1 through 12, for example, or groupings 1 through 5, then he'll flip it on you, throw a random thing, and that's where you start seeing it from all different angles, and your response time is just so quick. The GM says, back in the day when you spar, they don't really spar. It's like a fight. I'm not training you to spar. I'm training you how to be fast in your reaction, how to deal with if somebody grabs your hand, if somebody gives you this angle or thrust in that angle, and he just makes you so quick within the Blintzwalk framework, but you can still get that framework and have it translate over to other systems. And I'll do that even with my Muay Thai clinch. I'm clinching and I'll do an inside move in my hands, and people are like, well, what the hell is that? Because their boxes think it's here. And then when I add a system here, it confuses them. Or if we're standing up and we're grappling, I'll shake hands and I'm ready to grab, and I'll just hand fight them, and they're like, whoa, And I'm talking about black belts telling me as a brown belt, like, dude, you're hand fighting. I'm like, do some FMA. Now the danger in that is if you start introducing multiple skill sets without having a framework and not developing that myelination on that one framework, then your body's like, oh, I don't know where to go. It's like going to go jump from system to system to system to system. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but if you've got no framework, then it's hard to distinguish where we're going to go, and then it becomes
overload, right?
It becomes an overload. It's, you got to treat your brain like a supercomputer, but if you keep adding these programs rather than yeah, exactly. And you see that all the time with people who don't have a fundamental base in Muay Thai, and then suddenly they're doing Muay Thai, 2 weeks later boxing, 2 weeks later kickboxing, they come back and spar, they look like a shit show, you know what I mean? But or vice versa, a fundamental Muay Thai guy will get pieced up with a boxer because his hands are underdeveloped, and it just we can keep playing the what if scenario. You got a guy who's maybe Largo Mano, and then suddenly he's in the inside, and we're stick grappling, and they're like foreign world, I don't know. But the more you build your base, and then you start introducing other systems that can fill in the gaps and the holes within your journey, I think that's what makes you a dangerous fighter. Because I'll take somebody long range, and I don't mind going short range with them. I really don't, because I'm a grappler too. I know also do Blintzwalk, but yet I also have my power strikes in Blintzwalk for long range. So I think it's just a personal thing too. Some people want to stay long range, and that's fine. I just like grappling too. I like knife, I like stick, I like double stick, I like Steve. I gave my address publicly.
I like Steve too. But let's look at it from the lens. So Steve, what about the lens of years? So on the other side, so in other words, looking at years, why are years important? So we kind of covered hours. Why are years important?
Or
if they are, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, different people, it takes different people a different length of time for things to really soak in. And I think that the years matter because it gives time if somebody really, again, I was talking the other day about owning it. That at first people are just kind of like, what are we doing? What am I learning? How am I doing this? But at a certain point, hopefully a person starts to say, I need to be responsible for my own training. How do I be responsible for it? And it just takes time to work on it, to develop owning it. And so that's something that just doesn't happen instantly. I mean, some people are they're just more talented physically and cognitively than others. And some people are slower physically and cognitively than others. And so, you try, one of the things that you do is you put in the time during a given week and over years, and hopefully that leads to something. I think, though, that, by the way, one of the things that I wanted to say about sparring is that there is something other than, I mean, sparring is really useful, just kind of just a mirror to say about your responses. But one of the problems is that once you've sparred with somebody for more than 5 minutes, if this is a partner, you start to get very familiar with that person, and that starts to represent the real world less and less, because you meet that guy that all their tricks, and they know your tactics and what you're up to. And so you try and look at the real world and see the most common intuitive instincts of people, whether it's with empty hands or whether it's with weapons, and put that in a really central place as part of the curriculum. I'm not so worried about, well, what if I run into a guy that was trained in this little temple down in Fujian province in this part of China? I'm never going to run into that guy. I'm going to run into some jerk that's drunk or stoned, and he just doesn't like the way I look, and he's going to decide, obviously I'm going to try and exit. It's like, as Richard Bastillo said, you can call me anything you want. You can call my mother anything you want. Just don't try and put your hands on me. So, fight avoidance, of course, is still an important thing. And I do talk to my students about that, about, you've got to, don't be afraid of looking afraid or being afraid, because that's what gets guys a lot of trouble, is that, well, I'm afraid of looking afraid, so I'm going to get into the situation I shouldn't get into. Anyway, so what are the things? Looking for, being able to take advantage of people telegraphing, people taking advantage of people that don't understand distance, being able to manipulate their expectations with what you do. So there's a core thing that is in feeding students, I think, that's very important. That's a freelance kind of thing, but not quite sparring. And I think that's an important in-between phase. So I will sometimes step into range with a stick or a knife while starting to chamber. Because I want them to stop hit me. As I'm chambering, I want them to stop hit me. But sometimes I won't chamber, and so they have to hit me on the extension, or sometimes I'll strike before they have a chance so that they can get a feeling of hitting me. Let me step away. Of hitting me on the after. I want to say, can you get me now? Can you get me now? I missed you. Can you get me now? And so that becomes,
after. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it becomes so they're not even thinking about, is it before, during, or after, but they're just saying, there's the opportunity that I can get. I think, and that's not a sparring thing, that's a feeding thing, kind of in a loose way, but I think that's an important bridge between curriculum and sparring.
Yeah. So Tuhon, what your lens on years? Important, necessary, its value? What say you?
I think Steve touched on it, and let me elaborate on what he was saying from my perspective is that when I said wisdom in the post that you originally put, sometimes it takes that instructor to kind of click on that light bulb. It's either you find it in your own path where you're just like, oh, that makes sense, or the instructor will will literally make that light bulb go off in you. I'll give another story. I love stories, but I was training in Philippines. I was training Philippines at Grand Tuhon, and he put me in this pattern in the water, and I'm just like, oh God. And he said 2,000 reps, and at first I'm like, oh, okay. And after 999, 1,000, I kind of looked over. He's like, 1,001. I'm like, oh, you really did mean 2,000 reps. Oh, so I'm doing it. Of course, he fell asleep a little bit. Then he wakes up. He wakes up, and it was me. It was very Daniel-san, Miyagi-san thing. And I'm like, okay, I just did that pattern. And then and I'm just, not that I was doubting anything, just more like, man, I'm tired. It's like, it's hot. We're just worn down. We're training 16 hours a day. And he just went, boom. And I went, pop, 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 pop. And I was like, oh, that's why he was doing that. So, your light bulbs will click in within years. And those years, sometimes as different people come along your way, your journey, the different variabilities with sparring partners, like Steve said. If I'm sparring the same guy, I already know what their go-to is. I know that they're this and that type of pattern, So when you change it up and you go against somebody who exhibits a different style or different setup, it raises your awareness. And sometimes all those drills that you were doing, because drillers make killers, it comes out, and you're like, wow, that came out. There's the appropriate time and response for that. And it's now you have that light bulb, and then now that skill it comes to light more. It's stronger in its connection, and now you have another notch in your belt that I can use this for that line or that attack or that angle of attack or that type of person. So, like Steve said, if you become mundane in your training, it's the same thing. Like I said, you'll never grow in strength if you don't increase the weight. So you got to increase the load, and load can mean anything. It could be adding speed, adding tempo, adding pressure, and sometimes just a whole new different person. And so you don't get that in hours. You get that over the years. And so your wisdom develops over time.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and
Over the
because of
years.
that, yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And so that's where you compress that wisdom. You compress those years and go, this is my wisdom in my X number of years of training, rather than saying, I just did 2 weeks in Philippines, I'm awesome now. No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And so, yes, put in the time, yes, put in the hours, unless you come back with a rank. No, kidding.
No.
You got to put in your reps, you got to put in your hours, and then you got to, over the years, find ways to test it, pressure test it. And sometimes all it takes is a maybe even a seminar. It might be a sparring partner. It might be an epiphany with you just doing your Korenza. All of a sudden you're like, oh, that's where that's okay. I see now. But you won't get that if you're just doing the reps in without exposure to your aha moments. So that's in my opinion.
No. That was good. I'm just going to give a quick opportunity just to say hello to folks that have tuned in and that are watching. Yes, folks, if you're watching, tell us where you're watching from. Smash that like button. We got Tuhon Jack. We got Eric O'Brien from Florida. We have Terry from Stockton, California. Frank, who is from Connecticut. GM Bobby. We have Jay from Hawaii. We got Brother John Amok from Massachusetts. We got Tom Pena, England, London. Jimmy from Maryland. We got GM Miguel from Sacramento. We got GM Ryan. He's from Connecticut. And Surat from New York, all right. And Chris from North Carolina, John, and we have Michael from Delaware. All right, some new folks that normally. So, Steve, anything you want to piggyback off as far as the years are concerned? What Tuhon Belton mentioned?
Well, first I want to say that hello to Chris Nally. He's saying hello, gentlemen. So he's obviously referring to you and Belton.
What the hell did you go? He'll be back, folks.
I'll speak for him. Oh boy. If you can blame Chris Nally, I think that's what happened.
Yeah, I don't know what well he was yes, Chris. Steve was acknowledging. Folks, he'll be back. This happened before, so but any I like what you were saying. Actually, he is here in Double. Dude, okay. Steve, you got the blue screen.
Maybe Steve's still on dial-up modem versus like cable.
Something, huh? He's got something going on there. Hang tight, folks. He'll be back.
There I am. Okay, this is weird. You can see me now, and I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screens of me across the bottom.
That's why there's an echo.
Okay, I'm going to close out of a number of them.
Okay.
Okay. Wait, this one was removed by a host, so I'm going to click out of that. I'm going to click out of this one.
Okay.
I don't know which one to click out of, so I'm going to just.
Here, let me. Right now, I got you here, so hopefully.
Oh, he clicked the wrong one.
No, the one that he said hi in the box, but when I clicked the one that wasn't in the box, it removed everything. So when he comes back in, not
while we're waiting
anything.
for him, I do want to reference another gentleman.
Oh yeah, please do. Yeah.
So Dr. Kelly's famous saying of connect the system, or saying find the art within your art. He says this a lot. He always he when he does these seminars, we got these 8th degree guys from Kyokushin or Shotokan or whatever. He'll say, guys, don't discard what you've been practicing for years. You put 30 years into the art. It'll come down. It'll come out of your movement, but you gotta connect the systems and find that all your movements have relative uses within the context of what you're trying to accomplish. And so he says it really well when he says find the art within your art, and also connecting the systems, because you can go into another system. Like I said, when I use with my hand fighting in whether it's Muay Thai or BJJ, is that I'll get into PTK handwork or some Paratukin or even some Balintawak movements. And so I think it's all there because it's already been, the foundation has been sealed over time with reps. That also goes with years versus reps. So you can add to that. I just took the spot, Steve, just to get back on. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Steve, before you got caught up, you were acknowledging Chris Nolly, and you were going to piggyback off whether you want to give more on the whole years.
Well, I was just going to say that I think that the important point that that I relate to in terms of what Belton was saying is that of pushing your envelope. If you're always just kind of keeping things cool and mellow, and you're not pushing either the intensity or the speed or some attribute or somebody that moves in a slightly different way, then you're limiting yourself. And he's talking about, and I think that, learning anything is good. And then you also want to spend time on your own saying, well, where might it fail? And if it fails, is it because of my attributes and my training, or is there something that's tricky about this technique? And it's just the thinking, Bruce Lee, I think he really hit it on the, I don't mean to say he hit it on the head, but he said he didn't want students to just be intellectuals or bruisers. He wanted people to be not gun shy, so they would spar and they would work on their skills and not be afraid to get hit. But the people that were just the big bruisers that didn't think about the material and they didn't grow. And so if you're just an intellectual and you don't interact with somebody in a freelance setting, which is however that you put that, then you're not going to check on yourself. And if you don't think about what you're doing, then you're just going to rely on just trying to overwhelm somebody, which is what a lot of people do in fights. A lot of fights are two guys. The reason that a lot of fights end up on the ground, vernacular, regular guy, knucklehead fights, is because it's two guys that don't control range. They don't control anything. They're just trying to outpunch each other. They're both aggressing. They both got adrenaline squirting out their ears. So they end up, if somebody doesn't knock somebody on their butt, then they end up chest bumping and grappling and rolling on the ground because nobody was efficient. And that's a really common thing. So being able to control your emotions to that degree, and but so the growth has to be both intellectual and physical. That's a long-winded way of saying what I just said in 3 words.
That's fine.
We like to call that fight IQ, and when I reference that to my Muay Thai fighters, I say, you guys, you kick hard, you punch hard, you have great elbows, great knees. Now we need to work on your fight IQ. And they're like, okay. And I think that's just what, Steve was saying, that intelligence in using their different ranges and their weapons. So.
That's right.
There was a wrestler, famous wrestler, I forget his name, at Iowa State, and he never lost a match. He went on to the Olympics, I forget his name, Sanderson, maybe Cale Sanderson. And, but what he was known for was, it's not that he was, 6'8", and muscle from wall to wall, is because he was the best guy thinking it on his feet. His brain was better than anybody else's, and so that's why he was so successful.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely know. Yeah. Okay, let's flip the lens. Let's go. Okay. What could be the disadvantages of just looking at the lens of hours? Who's up? Who just finished?
Steve did, right? Unless you want to go at it first, Steve.
Yeah, I just finished, so it's on you, Belton.
So what are the disadvantages of just looking at hours?
If I know words, here's my journey, and I just look at it for hours. Like what would be perhaps, if any, the disadvantages of me just having that lens of just looking at my journey through the funnel of hours?
Oh, that's easy. Grandmasters say it all the time. Okay, good. You know all the grouping systems, but do you understand the application? It's the simple questions they ask you when you're training. You look good. You understand its application. So that's hours. When people are saying, but I know it. I know the strikes. I know the forms, whatever art again they're talking about. Yeah, but do you understand how to apply it? And so again, you can do those 2,000 reps, 1,000 reps, 10,000 reps, but if you don't understand where it applies and you don't actually take into the context of where it fits in and how it applies to you or the scenario, like Steve said, and in your fight or your expression of that art, then those hours they'll never get past a certain level. They'll never mature into what it's supposed to be. So that's the difference. And the disadvantage is not applying it, not testing it, not actually getting the aha moment of why you were doing that for the longest time, and just going, you're just a great kata person. You're just a great showman of the movement. You're not applicable. It's not applicable to what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think there's a maturity in any art form that comes after years, the hours over years. Again, if it's 2 hours a year, that's not going to cut it. But and you can accomplish something with a bunch of hours in 1 year, but there's something of hours over years that hopefully will make a difference. Again, assuming you have a teacher that's actually giving you some good guidance, and you're working on it. You're owning it. You're making the effort to own it.
There's a book by John Quick. I think it's called Limitless, and he says practice makes progress. And then just recently, I had chat. He goes, practice never makes perfect. Practice makes progress. And then Chad Lyman was just here recently, maybe about 2 weeks ago. And he said, practice makes permanent. And he says, I don't want to say perfect because if you practice wrong, you're permanently doing a bad movement. So I was like, wow. So those are my two sayings now. Practice makes progress and practice makes permanent. You can permanently screw up and have bad movement because you're practicing the wrong movement. So, and like anything else, there's a cheat code to it. Perfect practice makes, a better movement pattern. I stopped saying perfect because practice doesn't make perfect. You can practice shitty and you'll show shitty movements. So
makes sense. Same question through the lens of years now. So is there a disadvantage if I'm like, well, I got 24 years in? Is there and I stick to the lens of years? What is the what's wrong with that, or disadvantages of just looking through the lens of years?
Well, you're assuming that that's quality time. You're not, it doesn't, what matters is, there's a bottom line is, how is your skill level? Can it be improved? It can always be improved. And, and so to say I've done this many hours or this many years, actually, ultimately is irrelevant, because the point is I can be better. And the only way to get better is to make effort over time, you know, so people, you can't rest on your laurels. You can't say, oh, but I have this piece of paper on the wall that says I'm, you know, it's weird. It's like one of the things that I think that Friesen, Darren Patrick Friesen,
Darren, yeah.
was saying, maybe it was him, I'm not sure, but it certainly would be appropriate if it was him. It's like people think, I mean, I know a lot, which doesn't mean I couldn't get sucker punched, which doesn't mean I couldn't do the wrong move at the wrong time, which doesn't mean I still can't slip on a banana peel. Just because I know stuff doesn't mean that in a given moment, I will have it there for me. I am humble, not because of all the great martial artists that I know about and that I've seen, that I've studied with. It's easy for me to be humble because I know how easy it is to still screw up. I know all these counters to a jab. That doesn't mean I'll never get hit by a jab. You know, I wish it meant I would never get hit by a jab or a basic this or a basic that. But all it takes is just a little bit of a brain fart, and all of a sudden there you're going, okay, that was not a fun moment. You know, and then there was somebody in here talking about recovery is vital to training counterattacks. I agree. John Kuppas.
Oh yeah, he's a AMOC guy.
Yeah, I think absolutely true. So, the hours and the years, assuming its quality is good, but the bottom line is this moment, could I be better? What am I going to do about it?
Okay. What say you two on Belton on the disadvantages of looking through just the lens of years?
Steve said something pretty key there, the display of skill. It's very true in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world. You can shake hands and initiate a grappling session, a light sparring session, and those who know can automatically tell the amount of time that person put in. The reason why they say it takes 10 plus years to be a black belt is you can roll with somebody. If somebody claims to be a black belt, I'll just roll with them just one time. Give me 5 minutes, and I'll like, yeah, man, you're pretty talented. I could feel the pressure. I could feel your transitions. You're up there. You know, rolled with a purple belt not too long ago, and when I rolled that purple belt, I'm like, how are you still a purple belt? Again, that's years, right? There's no way you should be a black belt. It's like, oh, I just never really cared for rank, and you know, just got overlooked a couple of times and haven't really shown up to get promoted. Yada yada yada. Well, when you roll with this guy, you know, and he's putting black belts to shame. Again, not that you beat a black belt, you're a black belt. It's just more so his rolling, his understanding of grappling. And I'm using BJJ as an example, but it can apply to any art. You know, you can say, we joke around, those are the dirty white belts, because they say they're a white belt, but they've been rolling so much, they're dirty white belts. You know, or the blue belt that's been a blue belt for 7 years, when usually blue belt, sometimes you get it after your first year or your second year. So looking at another art class reference those years, you can, you know, just because they're ranked here, you know, doesn't mean they haven't put the time in years, and you can tell that they really are here, you know. So I think you got to be careful with that word rank, and I think there's so many discussions in so many FMA groups about rank, yada yada yada. At the end of the day, hey, you know what? Tell you what, I know you're a white belt. Let's just roll. And I'm like, there's no way you're a white belt. There's just no way. You know, for somebody who's been in the art for a long time, you know, you go up to any PTK guy, you're like, hey, let's do some sabayan. They're like, what's a sabayan? You're like, oh. You do volleyball. You go up to somebody who's a volleyball player. You say, let's pepper. And anybody who plays volleyball say, I know what peppering means. It's just, you know, bump, set, spike, bump, set. There should be a continuous rhythm, show display of control, and you know somebody has played at a high level when they know how to pepper. You know, so it's just every art, every sport, every combat sport has certain ground fundamentals and parameters where you can kind of tell the time put in. It might not be accurate, but you can mark somewhere within that time frame where they put the time in. You know, if you're a Muay Thai guy, you don't have a clinch game, then you obviously haven't really studied Muay Thai, because Muay Thai has clinch. You know, but you're a kickboxer. No, but I'm a Muay Thai. You're a kickboxer. You know?
Yeah, you're not clinching.
Yeah, you're not a Muay Thai guy, because Muay Thai has clinch, elbows and knees. So just a little example.
What What do you want to, what's your perspective, Dean? What do you have to add to all this?
I think they both have value and all that from a lot of what you guys just mentioned and, reiteration. If I had to pick one, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to go in the hours and that. I just, probably from the influence of talking with you and Burton and David Gould, I like that lane. However, I absolutely see the value in years, as Belton said, the wisdom and the years of being exposed to different people's systems, experiences. I think that has a tremendous value. I mean, how can it not? But if I had to pick one, if I was put on a spot, okay, you can only have one. Not that I'm discrediting years. I would fall into hours if I had to pick one.
But the hours turn into years.
But the hours turn into years. So
Yeah.
right. So in actuality, by picking hours indirectly, I'm picking years as well. So
Yeah.
Dean, you're a Piper guy, right?
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I guess.
Yeah. So I've been doing FMA for a little bit, and just about 3 or 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I ran into Piper, and I just went, wow. I was like, I know knife, but this is a different system. I don't even call it an art. I told Nigel, I said, this is a system, because you can't really call it an art. It's just a killing system, and that wouldn't have happened with ours. That happened over years, and over the years, the wisdom in knife just went, okay, that's a little different from the prison system.
Good point, right? Because you were able to see, compare and contrast this whole thing and being like, man, I thought I knew knife, but whoa, you know what I mean? So no, that's a valid point. Yeah, no, true. Yeah.
How do we lose Steve? But not the screen, but we lost him still.
He said he had to come right back. So I don't know if he's going to get a mask or. But what I want to ask next is, how can a curriculum or the direction of the curriculum from the teacher or system alter or affect hours or years? Can that happen? So Steve, I'm going to just repeat the question again.
I heard you. So it'll again. There are people that the teacher. It's what is the model, is the curriculum, which is a model of combat. How well does that work out or fit the real world? And the more that curriculum is able to fit in with the real world under pressure, if the teacher is guiding the student towards something that will hold up under pressure, or is this teacher guiding somebody towards something that would seem completely like it's not working? In the Kung Fu days, I mean, there were all sorts of stories about people that they knew all the forms, and they there was all this intricate skill, but then when they got into a situation, just nothing was there for them. It's a sad situation, but that's not an unusual kind of thing with various martial arts. So it behooves the teacher, hopefully the person has a teacher that is actually giving them something that is a value.
Okay. Do you want to Belton?
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I thought you were done, Steve. Sorry. Tuhon, Belton, what say you far as looking at it from the lens of, curriculum or teacher, the effect it can have on each one, hours or years?
Curriculum gives a template to then properly use the hours towards leveling up in aspects of the curriculum. So if I just said, come train with me, and I just said, do this, do that, next week let's just do this, do that, next week you're just accumulating hours of just scatteredness. So I think curriculum, it sets, okay, get through here, okay? If it takes you 75 hours, get through here. Some of you might take 150 hours. Some of you might take 300 hours. But at least you know that you can graduate. and you can go, okay, now I need to go here and here. So that it builds onto the years. But without curriculum, you can't see the bullet points, you can't see the outline, you can't see structure. And some people are so structured. We don't live in we live in America. We don't live in this world where we can just show up at Grandmaster's house and train for 7 hours a day. You know, we got lives, we got jobs, and so I think if you have nothing to strive for because you don't know where you're going, it's confusing. So your hours are you can then claim hours, and it's really not getting you anywhere. But if you have curriculum, hours can be structured in such a way that in 3 years I'll be a level blank. In 5 years I can possibly get my six, my seven. In 10 years I can, then you can see if you have a path, it's just more clear. Be it whatever art it is, you know what I mean? If and again, whether it's PTK, Balenciaga, or whatever it is, or even BJJ, in 3 years I can get a blue belt. I need to go to my instructor and say, what do I need to do? Well, you got to demonstrate 3 escapes, you got to demonstrate 3 sweeps, 10 throws, blah blah blah. When I was given my brown belt, Professor Eli Trevino, via Sensei Chiruto, who's a 5th degree from Nova União, said, go get Belton his brown belt. He's put in the years. This is literally a conversation, because I didn't have a black belt at the time. And Professor Eli showed up, drove, I believe, 2 hours, brought some guys in to test me. And it was quite the role. And I was humbled because I was without guidance for a couple of years. And I just felt like a POS, man. I don't think I deserved that brown belt. I didn't know he had the brown belt. And he goes, I was told to give this to you by a higher ranked black belt from Brazil. And because you developed a conversation with him, and over time he's just like, you need to give Belton his brown belt. So he's following a directive. And I said, I haven't rolled with Chiruto. I've never even met the guy. So then, and here's Professor Eli. I've never rolled with him too till that day. So I said, Professor, can I respectfully ask you, what do you require of a brown belt? And he said, well, it's about 130 moves. And I said, so you test your brown belt? He's like, yeah. I go, I'll talk to Sensei, but I want you to test me. And she's like, are you sure? Because this brown belt's yours. I go, I don't want it. I'm going to have to respectfully decline it. I want you to put me through the ringer because I don't want anybody to ever take it away from me that I didn't deserve it.
Right.
So I had all the years, but man, I went back to the hours right away. And so I went through his curriculum. He gave me a PDF. He goes, these are what I want out of you. And I studied. I told him, give me 1 month. And it was 130 plus moves. And I was like, man, I got to revisit this, revisit that. But remember, I've been learning from different professors. I didn't know what he wanted in his curriculum. So I messaged him a couple of times and said, what are your expectations? A month later, he shows up. This is 2020 lockdown. I didn't announce I was a brown belt till months after because, God forbid, people were in my gym during the first week of lockdown ever.
Oh, yeah.
And so I did. It was a 2.5, maybe 3-hour test, and it felt good because I had a curriculum of what he required over the years of somebody who's going to be a brown belt. If I look back and I didn't have that curriculum, or if I didn't have some base of understanding towards a curriculum from previous professors, I don't think I would have. All those years wouldn't have mattered. So I think curriculum is important because I want to get through high school to go to college. I want to know what 9th grade is. I want to know what 10th grade is. I want to know what it requires for me to get my high school diploma in that art, and then move on from there. So if you don't have curriculum, you might stay as a 9th grader you might stay a 6-year senior and take shop classes in art and whatever it is you do without fulfilling the requirements.
No, man, both of you guys are stellar answers, man. This is going better than I thought it was going to
go. Steve, you had less expectations.
That sounded like a diss to me.
Oh my God, I can't win. Oh my God. So, all right. So it sounds like this far, there's benefits absolutely to be in both lanes or to look at both lanes. Probably I should, better yet. Okay. Teacher systems influences on both. So, and then I got a question from Dragon, sorry. But anyway, first thing. So obviously we went over curriculum and all that, but teachers influence. I mean, a teacher obviously pending the IQ or the maturity of the martial artist. We're looking through the lens of FMA, but obviously, as we indicated, this can apply to any art. But assuming the student is, been around the block or hasn't, how can the teacher or system have an influence or impact on either? And I'm going to get Dragon's question. So, Steve, want to take a crack at it?
You first.
How does the teacher influence the student?
Not a little bit. Can the teacher indirectly have an influence of where it can go in years or hours and all that? And if so, is it problematic or could it be positive?
Hopefully a teacher has their head on straight, and their number one, their concern is the student's welfare and the quality of experience rather than them worshiping the teacher. And that they're working directly with the student's body and the student's brain to try and give them something that's of value in their life, rather than, if that's the teacher's priority, try to make the person a functional thinking individual and martial artist, then that really matters. If somebody is trying to make somebody a cult member and feel like they're the ones that have all the answers and everybody else is an idiot, then that's not good.
That's toxic. Yeah.
Toxic. There's a lot of toxic stuff in groups. Groups are problematic because they start to form a group identity, and it really needs to be constantly checked that people don't start to feel superior because, well, I'm wearing the school T-shirt and therefore I have magic powers or whatever.
Okay. Tuhon, what say you?
I'm going to reference all three of my grandmasters, and maybe that would make sense. I'm going to start with Grand Tuhon. So Grand Tuhon, when I was training with Philippines with him, and I would say, hey, GT, let's go over the 64 attacks. He's like, no. I was like, no, but it's PTA. Because I just want you to put it in your body. I want you to rep it out, and I want you to understand concepts. So he would constantly talk about tri-V, bisecting the line, this and this and that. And I might be putting myself on blast here, which I don't care. I have nothing to hide, So I would run across other Tuhons, and they would say, don't you know the Sagita set XYZ or Ocho Ocho or this and that? I'm like, no. And they're like, yeah, but you're a Tuhon. I'm like, and? so they would show me the movement, and I'm like, oh yeah, that one. Well, then you know it. I go, I didn't know I know it. So in other words, when GT's showing me all those movements, he stopped giving me reference frames of saying this is Sagita set 1, Sagita set 2. He just said, let's just do the reps. Okay, so that's that influence. GT is a firm believer putting the reps in, putting it in your body and movement. Grandmaster Bobby Taboada he had his curriculum, level 1, your base foundations up to level 6, right? And so you understood from your basics to your grouping systems, your feeding to your budding sequence to your etc. to your disarms and to semi-advanced disarms, all the way to you're about a guru, which was interesting when you reach a guru. So I'm a level 7, and to be a guru, you've got to then take his curriculum and you got to basically interpret it with your 24 techniques. So he asks you to show 24 techniques after you bring another person up to level 6. So you have to show that you can bring somebody up and teach them to be teachers. And then when he tests you, he looks at the way you interpret it. And he says, show your Muay Thai, show your BJJ, show your PTK, show your NSI. And so, am I frozen? I think I'm frozen.
No.
So he wanted to see your expression of his art. And the interesting part about that is during the exploration of my 7, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about Balintuak in relation to what GM Bobby was trying to accomplish. Dr. Kelly was the guy who unlocked everything in my head. He was just like, get out of the box, get out of the frame, because here's your Wing Chun, here's your JKD, here's your Muay Thai, here's your monitor needs, and then guess what? Here's your balance walk. And so he would connect the systems. And so each of those grandmasters taught me something about either reps, hours, or years over time with the wisdom that, like for example, what Dr. was trying to create. So I appreciate both sides to it, and I think it's a well balanced. But my fair warning to everybody is you can't just go, I'm just going to rep it out without understanding, or I'm going to go over concepts and principles only without putting the foundation in. You have to have a balance. It's like saying I'm just going to do this but never spar. Or I always spar. Well, if you always spar, because I tell my fighters, you're gonna do the same thing you're always programmed to do, because that's all you know, and your fight or flight response is always gonna go back to that 1, 2, 3, whatever that combo is, rather than exploring something new. So I would tell my guys, tell you what, you're only allowed to do this. You can only jab till you hit 20 times and get out of it just to work on your jab. Or I tell grapplers, you're allowed to do no submissions and only a rear naked choke. So they would have to find avenues and ways to create new pathways for that move. But I think I'm going to a different subject. Anyway.
No. But point. No, I thought both of you guys' points on that were well said. I mean, one question I want to bring up before we get into the question I received from a member was, when I originally posted that, there were some comments that we're leaning towards hours and its equation to attribute development. And what's Steve? You agree with that? Some of the sentiment that when I posted that.
Well, one of the I think an appropriate analogy is watering a plant. You take 5 gallons of water and you dump it on a plant, and a lot of it washes away. And so there's a rate at which the water absorbs. And if you try and push it past that, it just washes away. So, there's time. It takes time, I think. Some things can be learned immediately, but there's something that takes place over time that, absorbs, hopefully, with between the student's effort and the teacher's effort to put the things in context so that it is absorbed, there's something that happens. So the hours matter, the years matter, and then always coming back to just kind of self-examination, saying, how can I be better, regardless of my hours, regardless of my years? How can I be better? What can I do to be better? Am I willing to make that effort, or am I cool where it is? Because not everybody has the same commitment, and not everybody has to. It's a very individual thing. It's a very individual.
Yeah, the journey is definitely individual. Tuhon, as far as that goes, some of the comments again were leaning towards the hours being really associated with attribute development, and so did you agree with them or the comments?
Attribute development. Can you expand on that?
So in other words, when I posted that, and some of the comments that were coming in, some were kind of mentioning, or their opinion was basically that attribute development is more linked to hours as opposed to years and all that. And I wanted what's your opinion on that?
Ajahn Suchart, my multi-grandmaster, would always say, foundation first before style. So if attribute is probably synonymous with style, if you don't have a foundation, you can't develop your style. I think people stylize things too quickly, like Steve said, the cool stuff, and they don't realize the style that you see in YouTube. The reason why it's 1.6 million views is because they have great foundation. Everybody not going to Sanchai cartwheel kick like Sanchai. You forgot Sanchai's got 300 plus fights, 400, and they all trying to beat Sanchai. It's like, you guys can't have that attribute if you don't put in the hours. Over time, then you have your style. And your style is your style. I mean, everybody trying to be Bruce Lee, but they don't realize they can't be the better version of themselves. Everybody wants to be like the grandmaster. Don't be like me, be you. And find out what's the best version of you. So I think attribute-wise, a personal journey. And I think your hours in foundation, and then over the years, your attributes and your style will come out. but people want to rush things. We live in America. Me, now, quick. You know?
No, the quick fix. No, yeah. No, I know. Whether we want, no.
Yeah.
No.
The extraordinary weekend, the extraordinary weekend seminar. Yeah, I think there's something that can be learned, but it still has to be run through the hours and years if it's actually going to really probably be absorbed to its maximum effect.
No, well said by both. Again, this is. What would you both? Okay, let's get to this question before I forget that. So, Draken's question was, does it matter? I'm going to give you from both lens. His question was more from the hours perspective, and so what he's asking is, in the hours versus years debate, does it matter how far apart those hours are? That's his question.
Yeah, I mean, if I put in an hour a month, that's not going to be great. Again, there's doing the. Let's just look at weights. Look at lifting weights. Really doing a really good workout once a month is not going to get it. There has to be some kind of consistency. I think the body is a good analogy for a lot of things. There's a too much and there's too little. So what's the Goldilocks thing? There's putting in some hours over time, and again, can I walk? How, to what degree can I walk my talk is always the measuring stick you put up.
Okay, yeah. Tuhon?
It absolutely does matter. If you take a dancer and you show them a 16-count combination and you let a week go by and you say, show me the move again, that choreography is going to look stale, and probably going to get those moves wrong. The only way that's a possibility of them knowing how to do it right away, maybe even after a week, is prior experience. So a lot of times people forget that skills from other close related systems and or something that's similar to what they're doing at that time has a carryover effect. So I noticed a lot of people that pick up choreography, and let's be honest, some of these drills in Filipino martial arts is choreography. The reason why they do that well, and I've actually asked some people that I know, I'm like, what did you do prior experience? They were dancers. They've done some form of choreography, timing, rhythm, spatial management. We were in a room with probably 30 or 40 doctors, chiropractors, different people. There's a neurology thing in Arizona, and there was pattern sequencing, and they would do 1, 2, 3 patterns. They would change it 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It was fist, side, pom, or and the last 5 to 6 people that were there that hung up to past 8 or 9 or 10 patterns, I forget the number, was martial artists, dancers. But the nurses failed, the doctors failed. So it was very interesting to see that carryover effect. So yes, it does matter. But I also think prior skills and experiences help in that, but it's still not a shortcut. And don't use that as your cheat code, because you're going to pay the price later.
Okay. No, fair enough. What would you guys, if a student came, a newbie, somebody, again, we're using FMA as the kind of the template here, but it could be any art as you guys mentioned. What would you advocate to a student who maybe came up to you and was privy to hours and years, and they basically come up to you and they say, hey, look, should I seek both? What's your recommendation? Should I put more importance on one than the other? So somebody who maybe was exposed to these terms, but really maybe doesn't have a full understanding, like you guys have mentioned here, in more deeper sense. What would you tell them?
I take kind of there are teachers in a lot of martial arts, and I'm not saying that this is a negative thing at all, but they're really, they expect this to be a really important part of a student's life, and they kind of push them to be devoted. And I feel I can't do that. I feel I kind of take for lack of a less pretentious word, an existential approach. This is going to be as important to a student as it is to that student. And it's going to mean whatever it means to that student. And that means that student that also means that student has to be responsible for their own training. I just teach privately by and large. So that means that, people just come when they can come. Some people come once a week. There are other people that have come more than that, other people that come less. So the hours with me are really limited. So they really have to take responsibility for their own training. But one of the things that I've said that I try and encourage people so that they don't just kind of say, well, I'm just going to skip it, is that, every 5 minutes that you do something matters. And if you have 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there, you're waiting for the toast to come up and you shadow box and you do something, or you have a stick and every 5 minutes you're waiting for a call and you do something, it adds up. It adds up. So if you're not having a monk-like life and devoting 3 hours a day, you can still accomplish something. And so there's a good news, bad news scenario. The bad news scenario is that you could be really good and really skillful and still eat it. I always use the seatbelt analogy about martial arts. You wear a seatbelt not because it magically protects you in any crash. You can still die in a car crash, but it makes your odds for an outcome better. And martial arts makes your odds there's no guarantee, but it makes your odds for a good outcome in a confrontation better. And so to that degree, the more time and hours and years or whatever effort, the more accumulated effort, just covered hours and years, the more accumulated effort that you make, under with a good system, the more likely it is going to be there for you under duress.
Yeah, no, good answer. How about you, Tuhon? So a new student comes up to you and says, hey, I heard these terms, hours and years, and I'm just wondering, Tuhon Belton, what do you think I should focus on? Should I focus on the years or hours? Like, what would you tell them?
Tell them you would focus on not listening to Dean's programs anymore.
Can you still hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, everything's frozen, so I don't even know if I'm on the screen. But well, I tell them, how much money do you got, and then if you buy 10 cents, no, I'm kidding. No, no. What I do tell them.
How many zeros do you?
So what I tell them is this: what's your goal? Because if their goal is to be a student and learn the art, then we're talking years. Then they can look at the hours relative over their commitment and their schedule. If they are deploying in 4 weeks, and and this really was the case with Datu and I went on base to train first group special forces guys. They only had so many weeks. Then we have to look at the, and their goal wasn't to learn Art C, Fart C 1s and 2s, and we had to go straight to the meat of what they're going to face and what their needs are. So it depends on their needs 100%. If I did a mom-daughter self-defense class because the girls were going off to college and the moms hired me, I'm not going to go, okay, let's work on, angle 1 and angle 2. We went straight to, this is the scenario. This is what you need. This is as baseline as it gets. To the traditional martial artist, it looks so boring, but that's not their journey. That's not their needs, and that's not their end goal. So I always have to ask what their goals are. And if the student is concerned about hours, I'm going to say, okay, well, what's your goal? To be a student. I'm like, then let's look at years. Like, well, I have to leave in 2 weeks and I'm going to a new city and I feel, okay, let's look at the hours. I should see you 6 times within the next 2 weeks, at least 3 times a week. So you have something to walk away with. So it depends, yeah.
No, I like both of your answers.
I like it.
Really,
I think his answer is better.
You guys are on fire tonight, man. You guys are all seriousness. I think you guys. I'm so glad I chose you two. You guys are. All right, we're gonna tie this into sparring. So, yeah. So, all right. In general sense, do one or the other lend themselves better for sparring / fighting? Steve?
It's still the same thing to me. I don't make a huge division between hours and years. It's kind of like some kind of consistent effort over time, that where you can feel that you are making some growth, that you're getting better responses, that you're making less of the same mistakes, identifiable mistakes, and that you're just, you're getting better skills. It's a mirror. It's a mirror that, you do your sparring and then you go back saying, okay, it looks like this is what I need to work on.
Mm. No. How about you, Tuhon?
I think Steve hit it on the nail. You use sparring. I think a lot of people treat sparring like they're supposed to win a prize. I tell my fighters, I'm like, did you walk away with a gold medal? I mean, we're here in the gym. You're just here testing to see what works, what you need to work on, and go back to the drawing board because you've got to fight in 2 months. My kids are the best to train, and I'll tell you what, I have like 7 to 10 Muay Thai fighter kids, and what's really cool, they fought about a month ago, then we just fought recently 2 weeks ago or something like that. I forget the time frame, and every one of my kids on the last fight we just had was almost a completely different kid, because what happened after the fight, we went back to the drawing board and I said, we need to drill this. Hence, let's go back to hours. So we drilled. One kid was constantly not using their hands, or their defense was this and that. So every kid had an individualized goal plan / we had a group effort in the drills that we had for our fight team. And when we sparred, some of these kids fought a kid they fought before, and we went to a sparring party at the school, and it was amazing just to see the development. And sparring really brought that to light. What was really learned, what was really put in their body, and again, the myelination of their neurons, and what were they, under stress, under load, were they pulling those moves out that we went over. Now, if we just didn't drill, we didn't do hours of the reps, and we just did spar, and then go fight, I guarantee they would look the same. So they have to have a balance of both. And as Steve said it, you have to look at sparring as a way to go, okay, we just tested it a little bit. Let me just, see if I need to realign some things. And you go to the range to zero in your target. It's the same thing. You don't just go, oh, got a gun, let me just shoot away. You got to zero in what your focus is on. And then once you accomplish that, you change the goals again, and you get different opponents, and then you advance. And that's why when you're 5-0, you get harder opponents. So that's my take.
It's interesting. There was a time many years ago when Dan and Asano had these two schools. There was the school in Culver City that he shared with Hawkins Chung, and then he had his the school in it's actually down in Torrance. That before he moved to Marina Del Rey. And he said that he kind of experimented with one group, he did mostly glove and pad drills and all the stuff. Another group, he emphasized sparring. And then he got the two groups together to see if he really noticed any differences in their training, what came out. And if I remember correctly, which may not be the case after all these years, that if I remember correctly, he was saying that really it was very individual. It ended up being actually very individual. But he said that one of the things that was really interesting, and this is kind of a sidebar, was that there were people that were seniors because I was at the Torrance Academy. There were seniors in the Torrance Academy that you were used to kind of being very confident because they knew who was the experienced fighter and who wasn't. But when they got together with these other people who were strangers to them, he could see how shy a lot of them were relative to, because these were people that were unknowns to them. And they were suddenly shy because either they didn't know who they were or they didn't want to look bad or whatever. And it was just the psychological element seemed to really matter in that case. It's interesting.
Oh, I remember, I think the white was telling me something. It sounds, what you just described sounds very familiar. I think on one of my visits in Miami, he was sharing that, and I thought the reference he was using was FMA, but it sounds so exact what you just shared.
It might have been, though. He might have done.
No, yours sounded better. No, just kidding, Dwight. No, just kidding. So, what if somebody came out and he said, "Whoa," and again, I'm drawing reference from the original post, and I went back today, and it just took me forever to find it, but and again, some of the folks lean toward the hours in regards to the sparring and all that. And I don't want to say maybe they completely discounted years, but there was the feel from reading the comments that they were in the hours lane far as sparring and all that, as opposed to years. But I think you guys kind of summed it up that they both obviously hours leading to years, and they both have a place depending on the objective and the goals.
Well, they're probably saying it's called ring rust.
Somebody
comes in and then they haven't trained and haven't fought in so many years, and they just versus the guy that's still been putting in the hours in, and they look suddenly different. But I'm going to still have to say, you know what? I had a guy just recently, and he's a pro fighter. We took a fight, and it was he hadn't fought in 4 years. We did a 2-month training camp, and we went for a title fight. He was really nervous. He said, "Hey, coach, I don't know. I mean, it's 4 years. This is a title fight. This guy's a shoo-in for UFC Contender Series." I said, "Who cares? I go, it doesn't matter. You're 7-5. If you lose, you're 7-6. Doesn't matter. The guy's already slayed. You're the underdog." And so we showed up, and Tuhon Jared was there, and Paula Rubio. They were at that venue because they were filming in Utah. And anyway, we beat the guy. We absolutely we beat the guy. And no, we're in Utah. Where were we? Anyway, we beat the guy. And from hearing the announcers were like, "How is this possible? This guy hadn't fought in 4 years." So there's always going to be your anomalies and your one-offs, and like Steve said, it's individual. And I think the 2 months of prep work and the difference was, again, and I'm saying this is where years come in. This gentleman was wiser, had more wisdom over time. He got his life together. I mean, he stable job, great relationship, was in a good place. And I think that was over the years he found himself versus that young fighter who's job to job to job. I'm going to be at the gym all day. I'm the next UFC.
No consistency or
no consistency. And so he gave me 8 weeks of solid training with a wiser, more mature fighter, and we just beat the guy that was supposed to be a shoo-in to the Contender Series. And so, I mean, you can look at it from either perspective. I agree in the hours, though, but what about that situation? How do you
100%. That's a good example. How about you, Steve?
Yeah. Yes.
And Steve has spoken. We will now move on. Steve.
I just think it keeps coming back to, you can't say I have done these hours, therefore I'm good, or I've done these years, I'm good. You got to say, can I improve?
Yep.
What more do I need? What more do I need to do? And and considering that, I mean, I remember, I'm embarrassed to think about it now, but in my first years of Kung Fu training, when I heard that somebody was a Kung Fu master, I thought that somehow that was some kind of perfection, because obviously I didn't know what I was talking about. And I just didn't have perspective. And I just thought, wow, they've arrived. And I didn't realize what that did and did not mean. But the point is that, I mean, look at Dan Inosanto, for example. He's somebody that is not satisfied with whatever level he's at. He's always working to learn and examine and re-examine. And, you know, and Bruce Lee was always looking to examine and re-examine. And all the best fighters are people that are, you know, or martial artists are people that are looking to say, okay, you know, what, you know, where can I improve? You know, and also it's boring to say, you know, to say, oh, I have arrived. I know. First of all, it's delusional to say, to think that you know everything there is to know, or that you couldn't be. That's just bizarre. That's just mental illness. And secondly, it would be boring. You know?
Yeah, right. What keeps you going? What keeps you interested? What keeps you chasing? You know what I mean? Obviously, the interest in that, you know, you don't know everything, and you want to be exposed to new things, and to keep it going and all that. At least for me, anyway, I want to be, well. Plus, I want to be the best version humanly possible of myself. And do you ever reach that? My answer is no. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We have been waiting for you to improve.
I know. And everything, and your questions, and your guests, and your presentation, your whole platform.
You know, it's interesting because I think surfing is not a bad analogy. I mean, surfers, you know, each wave is going to be a little bit different, you know, and each interaction with somebody that you're training with or sparring with is going to be a little bit different. But again, hours and years, you know, you just get a little bit more quicker in the moment, and you're able to just read things better. But that's one of the reasons that it would keep somebody doing it, is because it continues to be interesting. It continues to be, you know, you're surfing your own brain through your body. You know, your brain is part of your body. It's not that there's the brain and there's a body. It's like they feed each other, and they're part of the same thing. But that's what gets you lit up, is the interaction and the seeing how in the moment you are or not.
No, man, awesome, guys. Man, we're almost okay.
Thinking about what you said, and you know, why you lean towards hours, and I'm the same way too. I think what even Steve said too, hours become years, but you can't go backwards and say, I'm going to focus on this next 3 years in achieving this. I think you just need to focus on where you're at, put the time in, and it can be done in a year, it could be 2 years. But to say I'm going to focus on the years rather than the hours become the years, but you can't go with years and then break it down backwards mathematically, and then dissect it going, if I just put in 2 hours a day times this, carry that minus the 1, in 3 years I'll be this. Oh, there's so many variables that happen along the way.
Yeah, so injury.
Focus on the hours. Yeah. But I lean towards hours too.
Yeah, but you know, again, I see the absolute benefit of both, and I clearly see it more from hearing your guys' lens and all that, which I thought you guys did incredible tonight. This is by far, I thought, one of my best shows. You know, and all that, and I thank you both for coming on. But so let's future goals. So Steve, what are your future goals? What do you got cooking?
Well, personally, just to I've been a little bit lazy, or I'm not going to say how long. So physically, just do some regroup some of my own training, but also I still want to put out a volume on stick and some other specifically Filipino things that I have not addressed yet on video that would be streaming. And then there's a whole new thing with understanding, I'm being dragged kicking and screaming into the new world of the way sites are done, and I'll be bundling, you know, instead of just having a volume on one subject, it would be various chapters that would be available as a bundle, and you know, different things, so they pick and choose, kind of like, because people don't buy albums these days, they buy cuts.
Yeah, they just download a song.
I still buy albums, but anyway, you know, so there's material where I think that if it was just to do something to be out there, I wouldn't do it. But if I feel like it can make a contribution to training, then I will, in terms of training method and priorities of training, then I can do that. So there's going to be some stuff. I may actually do a volume on what I call actually advanced trapping as opposed to more complex trapping. But it'll be something on single stick, and it might include staff as well. And so that's something that I'm
awesome. I'm looking forward to it. I really enjoyed your night program. Tuhon, what do you got cooking? What are your future goals? What's coming? What do you got going?
I was traveling a lot back in 2019 and all prior COVID, so I think maybe my traveling might pick back up. I know Latin America reached out to me, and there might be a tour in the works, different South American countries, with PTK and just Kali and stuff, and also other stuff. Um, I mean, I'm in theweaponsguide.com. Jason Scully. So I put a bunch of stuff out there: knife, double stick, blah blah blah. You can check that out. Val Mijelovic in Masters Magazine also filmed. I think there's a Blink Talk DVD, PTK DVD, and an NSI DVD, the Triple Threat. But I mean, I have a lot of these guys do this stuff for me because I'm not a video expert. I just don't have the time. I mean, and there's even dynamic striking. I did a pad holding series. I think just having all these arts keeps me damn busy. I think it's wonderful I do all these arts, but it's a lot of work, and I think people are like, how do you do all these arts? I go, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to be all these
you're
arts.
coaching, you're running a school. I mean, I mean, you got, your plate's freaking, I can't even imagine. Yeah. it's
fun, but sometimes I look back and I'm like, damn, it's just so damn busy. But I don't know, maybe I might do my own videos, but I've always had people come in and whatever, they give me a cut or I just do it for them. But I don't know yet what the future holds with traveling. Hopefully I can get back into Philippines.
Hopefully it opens up.
Yeah, my dad's there, so I'm even looking at dual citizenship and figuring that out, just because they won't allow you back in if you're not a citizen. So just trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. All right. No. Well, this was spectacular. I really, I really thank both of you for coming on. I thought it was exceptional what you guys presented in your answers and all that. So a big thank you to both of you.
Thanks for having us on. Thanks for doing the show. Thanks for trying to actually talk about these things in a kind of open and ecumenical way. So thank you, Dean.
I'm gonna keep going. I tell everybody asks me, how long do you keep doing this? Well, until there are no results or the results are toxic. So that's my answer. So if nobody's watching or those are watching is just toxic, but yeah, somebody just said great show. Yeah, it was. Just to me, this is one of the best ones. I thought you guys
thank you.
Nailed it. Like the stuff that you guys were talking about, it was, I don't know, fantastic. Both of you,
Awesome.
And the comments are reflecting that too. But I hope you guys are doing. I wish you guys the best. I hope you won't be seeing the last of me. But you guys did so well. I'm gonna think of I'll think of something else to bring you guys back, both back on. You guys, I thought you guys, played nicely and you guys interacted well.
I really like. This is the first, other than yesterday, this is the first I've met Belton, but I'm just really, I think, he is that guy that I was talking about who's thoughtful, but also physical, so.
Yeah, all the above. Oh no, his reputation,
So.
So
we're
going to get him more on here, Belton. I think you're going to be a frequent flyer.
Steve, since you said those nice things, I won't DM people your address, so thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, thanks, and I appreciate Dean having you on because it makes me look like I have a lot of hair.
That's great.
Anyway, if people, and by the way, the one little plug thing I'll do, it's like if people can go to stevegrody.com to see what video stuff I have, or they can go to see my little knife trailer thing at Vimeo.
Can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you both send me your links via Messenger and I can post them in the comment section?
Sure, via. Okay, I think I know how to do that.
If you do that, then I'm just gonna pull it and I can put them together for you guys.
Okay, will
awesome.
Do. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks.
But I'm happy to do it. But you guys, in the meantime, I'm gonna be thinking of another theme to bring you both back on. But if I don't talk to you, you guys have a great Happy New Year.
We will, and you too.
Happy New Year, guys.
I'm not going to speak for Belton. I hope you have a good New Year.
That's why I love you, Steve. Steve,
And make sure
you're Filipino at heart. The way you joke around, I do.
Make sure.
Well, hopefully, if you guys are not connected on Facebook, hopefully you guys connect. No.
Yeah, and make sure that if you come through, what's your city, Belton? Where are you based?
I'm in Nepal. No,
Nepal.
Just in case people do want to come see me. No, I'm in Bellevue, Washington. So Seattle's close by.
Okay, I'll make sure I keep that in mind. If you ever come down to LA, let me know.
Okay, I actually might do that because I might head down to LA for a couple of things. So I'll let you know.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, thanks, guys. Really appreciate the time. It's fun.
All right, same here. You guys take care.
Okay, take care. Dude.
Thank you. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow, that was great. Much better than I thought it was going to go. I don't know. I think one of my best ones, or I shouldn't say me, them. They did the work. Who is coming up Wednesday? Stockton Multi-Style. Chris LaCava and Nelson Pinto. So if you can join us, that's going to be Wednesday, 7 p.m. And I think it's going to be great. We're going to get, this will be the second time we've covered Stockton Multi-Style. The first time was quite some time ago. So I think it's going to be great having these guys back on. There's been enough time gap to have them on. So those you haven't seen that, you'll get a chance to see what they do. They're going to do demos too. So that's always a good thing. And all that. Not the Christmas, I keep saying Christmas raffle. Christmas is going by. The typhoon tragedy or the mess there in the Philippines. We are doing a fundraiser, an FMA discussion. Tom Pena, put a wonderful flyer together outlining what, where it's going to Red Cross, where you can send the money, which is basically my PayPal account. And then we're going to send it over to the Red Cross. I'm not sure how long Tom wants to run it for. But I think it's fair to say at least a week or so down the road from here. But if you can, anything, it's $10 a ticket, and you check out the items that are being raffled. So if you go on for a discussion, it's pinned. Just click on it. You'll see the things are being raffled, all the items and all that. But just some really nice things that people donated and all that. So yeah, please do that. You're gonna be helping obviously others over there in that. And again, if you can, check us out Wednesday night again. Stockton Multi-Style, Chris LaCava and Nelson Pinto, 7 o'clock, same time as tonight. And lastly, if you have not already, please subscribe to FMA Discussion. Again, all the proceeds we receive from the channel go to charity. Okay, we don't keep anything of it, so you're helping others. Okay, by subscribing to the channel. How easy is that, right? All right, folks, thank you for those who watched and tuned in, and I will see you Wednesday night.